Okay.
Good morning, everybody, and delighted to welcome Teresa Lewis from the MOVE Group to deliver this week's presentation, which is Hiring Overseas, a Step-by-Step Guide. So over to you, Teresa.
Thank you all. Just to start off by saying, there's several different ways in which you can hire overseas. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. Okay, so there's lots of factors at play when choosing how to do it, and it can seem daunting. So today I'm just going to outline some steps to give you a general structure of a guide of what to do when you're contemplating hiring staff in another country. And we know everyone's journey is going to be unique and that it's not going to follow the same path, but hopefully what I'm going to explain to you today will be useful and for anyone who is considering broadening their horizons when it comes to employing outside of Ireland. So the first thing is to kick things off. It's like to be clear on who you want to hire. So, that's what responsibilities they're going to have, what the necessary qualifications are going to be, and what level of experience do you need them to have to suit the role for your company. So once you're clear on that, then you can set a budget for the position, and that will involve payroll, taxes, benefits, and any additional costs for that hiring process. And it's a good idea then to set a timeline to align these with your global strategy, because that's got to fit in with your business goals and project deadlines. And that could be helpful then for any overall planning. So I think salary benchmarking is crucial, to be honest. In order to retain a competitive edge, you need to research what the salary is going to be in the target country. So to make sure that you're offering an attractive package in line with local expectation. So things to consider there is like cost of living, industry norms, and so on, to make sure that that aligns with what your organization is looking for. So you might want to, you might want to do this through local recruitment agencies or people that can offer this service, but it could well be an employer of record agency, because sometimes they will do a salary benchmarking as well, like ourselves, MOVE Group. And it's worth understanding that it can actually cost up to about €25,000 to replace a staff member by the time you take into account things like recruitment again, training, development, etc. So I think really we can do one as little as €250. So it's a bit of a no-brainer sometimes to weigh up if that is worth it, because if you get the salary right from the get-go, then it's obviously going to save you money in the long run. And then I suppose you've got to ask yourself, the way you're hiring, are you hiring legally? So it's a really good idea to familiarize yourself with the employment laws in the country in question. And you need to keep up to speed with tax obligations, payroll and benefits and so on. And a lot of that is like region specific as well. So if you are in any doubt, then obviously it's good to check with local experts or an employer of record provider, because they're going to ensure that all of these laws are taken into consideration. And next, when we talk about the hiring model, there's several different models that you need to consider that would be correct for the sort of strategy that you're planning. So there's direct hiring, there's employer of record model, and there's independent contractors as well. And there could be a few other models depending on what country or the nature of your business as well. So when it comes to the employer of record, they're going to have entities set up all over the world, and then you use that to outsource your staff, because they can ensure that your HR and payroll and contracts are all taken care of. And it just means then that you can concentrate on actually managing your staff and going about your day-to-day business while they take care of that. So it's a kind of a real flexible way of hiring in another country. When it comes to independent contractors, then it's important to understand that there could be certain risks involved with that, such as risks to the workers and risk to the company. So with an independent contractor, there's if they get misclassified, for example, so if an employee gets misclassified as an independent contractor model, then it could mean then that that worker is missing out on vital things like benefits and so on. So, you know, they could be not getting things like minimum wage. They might not be getting paid overtime. They could be losing out when it comes to things associated with labor laws and so on. So that's the way that they could lose out. And then the risk to the company could be financial and other sorts of penalties. So with an independent contractor service, also sometimes known as an agent of record, that can also be outsourced to a global employment solutions specialist. And what they will do then, they will more than likely run 2 assessments. And those 2 assessments, the first one of which will be to check that the worker in country is set up correctly with the authorities so that they are actually legally self-employed. And the other assessment is to check things like the job description and the fee structure. And there'll more than likely be a questionnaire that the client needs to fill in. And depending on the answers of that, then that will deem whether the job role itself is in keeping with that of an independent contractor. And then once those checks are passed, it's a really simple invoice and pay service. And it just gives people peace of mind then that compliance is taken care of. And that whole sort of aspect is going to be handled then by the provider. So it just means that the administration and the in-country support has been handled correctly. Other sorts of checks to consider when you know employing somebody in another country is your recruitment and interviewing. So qualified candidates, they can be sought by advertising on global job boards or going through recruitment agencies and professional networks. So when you're interviewing someone, it's good to be mindful of the cultural differences as well. So you have to sort of like build that into your approach to ensure that there's correct communication and avoid any misunderstandings. So a good tip then when you're interviewing is to is to tailor your questions to assess both the technical ability and to see if the person's going to be a good cultural fit. When it comes to employer offer letters, that a number of countries can have specific regulations around this, including that an offer letter can be considered a binding employment contract. So this means it's essential to draft these documents really carefully to ensure compliance. Whereas the rejection letters, they're not always mandatory, but they are a nice sort of respectful way of informing candidates who've been unsuccessful. So if you treat your candidates with respect, then it's going to be a good thing for your reputation for your company. And it's also going to encourage return applicants as well. And with employment contracts, in light of the really very many variations in employment laws between countries, your overseas employment contracts, they're always going to be different. Some countries even require a specific format for their contracts, and this can be further complicated by industry variances. And they need to be drafted in line then with local legal standards, taking into account region-specific clauses such as probation periods, severance terms, notice periods, and confidentiality agreements. So it's a good idea to take the opportunity at that stage to ensure there's total clarity, and that's going to avoid any disputes then which might happen further down the line, because you don't want to run into that. Then once you've hired the dream team, you need to get them registered then on the payroll with local authorities. So you make sure then at that stage you establish practices that are going to comply with local tax laws, such as required pay dates and accurate deductions for your social security contributions. And then don't forget about benefits, because mandatory benefits such as health insurance, paid leave and retirement plans, they need to be accounted for. And then sometimes non-mandatory benefits can be offered as well. And if you offer standard company benefits that apply, across your whole organization, you're going to need to assess then if these fit with your statutory requirements in the new country. So it's worth your while during your salary benchmarking phase to check if there's certain expectations in the country of work, and that's going to ensure then your remuneration package is competitive and attractive. So for example, in Spain and Belgium, they've got a 13th salary, and that's mandatory. Whereas in Switzerland, it's customary. So it's worth, checking that out at that stage, doing a little bit of research. And also it's important to build a consistent benefits package across all your country locations, if you have people spread out in different places, so that no employees are going to feel like they've been treated unfairly. So when you work with a global payroll provider or a benefit specialist, that, they can simplify that process for you. So once these steps have been, put into place, then it's time to, get the show on the road, so to speak, with your international staff. And you can tailor your onboarding process and select a start date for your staff. So it's important to foster a really welcoming atmosphere for your new recruits and provide them with really clear, concise documentation and processes from the get-go. And obviously introduce them then to your wider team and get them to realize what your new company procedures and practices are. So you can prioritize the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and ensure then that there's going to be a seamless transition. You can offer cultural training and ongoing support then for your workers. So just to summarize it up then, in summary, give your global expansion strategy due thought, develop a real structured process, ensure that you're ticking all the boxes that are necessary for when it comes to your hiring models, your payroll, your benefits, and your onboarding. And if you come up with a good strategy and it's compliant and you're thinking empathetically about your hiring process for your employees, you're just going to ensure then that your company's future is on a good trajectory, so that in the long term that you're going to retain your staff and you're going to foster a really decent, good, dynamic environment for your company that's going to drive it forwards. And that's it. So do you have any questions at all?